introduce our speaker. Dr. Dianne Painter is the chairperson of the Curriculum and Instruction Department at the School of Education and Human Disabilities at Shenandoah University. She also heads the Professional Studies Certificate Program for Special Education, and for 21 years she was a special education teacher in Maryland and Virginia, and 9 years she served as Technology Resource Specialist in Fairfax County. So her experience runs deep in K-12 education. She earned a doctorate in special education technology at George Mason University and a master's degree in special education at the University of Maryland, College Park. Her undergraduate degree is from George Mason University in elementary education. And after 30 years of K-12 teaching, she retired in 2005 to become a full-time teacher educator. In 2010, she was awarded a Teaching with Today's Technology grant from the Virginia Foundation for Independent Colleges and the Verizon Foundation. She's going to talk about some of where that led during her presentation. The purpose of the grant was to enhance teacher education programs, to assure that future K-12 teachers are well versed in new technologies and can apply technologies in their teaching. The focus of our efforts is to train college professors and their pre-service education students to use Thinkfinity, and she'll talk about that, resources to plan and carry out instruction. And so with that said, Dianne, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right. I'm going to click on Show My Screen, and then he's going to let me know. There you go. So I'm just going to go ahead and minimize my GoToWebinar control panel. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're attending my session today. Welcome from all over the world. That's pretty exciting. What I'm going to do first is I want to introduce what I do a little bit more, and just to tell you that I work with pre-service and in-service teachers, meaning people who want to become teachers are in a pre-service program, and people who are already teaching and are earning, let's say, a master's degree are in the in-service program. And what I've been doing in my methods class, teaching methods classes, is to introduce to them how to create engaging web-based lessons that they can use through their course management systems such as Blackboard or Angel, but they can also use it in the classroom with interactive whiteboards, or they could use them on stations, computer stations that are set up in a computer learning center, for example, in the back of the classroom, or you could take your class to a computer lab and they can interact with these web-based lessons at their own station. So there's a variety of ways that you can create a web-based lesson, but the key is to create a lesson where the students can actually be engaged with the lesson. Instead of just clicking and reading and absorbing content information, they're actually interacting with the content that's being presented. So with that, I created this SoftChalk lesson called Creating Interactive Activities. And at the end of today's presentation, this lesson will be available to you, as well as another lesson that I'm going to show you through SoftChalk Connect. This particular lesson begins with using well, the whole lesson really talks about how you can embed interactive activities that are already a part of the SoftChalk package. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the examples that I showed my pre-service teachers that we're going to create web-based lessons in mathematics. And then I'm going to show you, once I exit this particular lesson, a lesson I actually created in mathematics and for second grade that my granddaughter worked through, and you're actually going to see her doing some of the activities on an interactive whiteboard. So with that, let's get started with this one. The very first page talks about creating interactive activities in SoftChalk, and I'm introducing the Did You Know activity that you can embed in a SoftChalk lesson. So imagine being in a classroom, for example, and you have a big interactive whiteboard, a smart board or an active board, and the teacher has this question that's showing. And so the teacher asks the class, how many kinds of interactive activities can you build into a SoftChalk lesson? And people may talk about and take a guess, and then when you click show the answer is 15. Now the other day Steve told me that in this version, version 6, there are 15 activities, and in the next version of version 7, I understand we're going to have a few more than that. So now I'm going to click on go to the next page, and this particular activity is called a tabbed info activity. And so what you do is you just mouse over, these tabs appear, and you can see that the card information down below will change. So in a large classroom for my pre-service teachers, I was talking about some of these devices that can be used in mathematics to assist children in learning, and I didn't have to click and go from page to page. I just simply did a mouse over as we were talking about these things. So that's called a tabbed info activity. This next activity is called a flashcard activity. And what you can do is you can, on the card, type text, again, add a picture, talk about the information. And in this particular case, I'm asking, advocates can be considered such a tool. What are tools called that assist persons with disabilities? And I engaged my students in the conversation, and they said assistive technology. Now, instead of doing a tabbed info, going over the top of the different tabs, you have an arrow here that will go to the next question. So my question on this card is, who was one of the first persons to make a connection between music and math? And when I click on show, you see the answer is Pythagoras. So I'm just going to just click through here and just show you these fairly quickly and let you read them. And then I'll click on show so you can see the answer. This is actually called a talking calculator. So in this pre-service class of students learning to be math teachers, I was trying to get them to think about technology that would assist students in learning mathematics. So on this activity, I'm showing them some of those devices. This is called a coinolator. And the last one, I asked, what is this child doing that may help them with that problem? And the answer is, of course, using an interactive whiteboard, which I was using with them as I was teaching them this lesson. I'm going to go on to the next page. This particular activity is called a drag and drop. And I will tell you from personal experience going into Virginia Avenue Elementary School and seeing children using SoftChalk lessons with drag and drop activities, and later on you'll see my granddaughter doing a drag and drop activity. The kids really do enjoy this particular activity. They would go up to the interactive whiteboard and they can click and drag and match. Again, you customize this to whatever it is that you're teaching. All right. And the nice thing about this is that you can also click to restart it so the children can take turns going up to the interactive whiteboard. But I also want to remind you that you don't have to have an interactive whiteboard to do this. You can do it just as I'm doing it right now at a computer station and using your mouse. Also, from personal experience, I can tell you they love the puzzle activity. So I found a picture, and the children can go up here and just drag and drop and try to assemble the picture. Now, this was kind of an interesting activity with one of my students, one of my graduate students, and she had some difficulty with it. And what I noticed is that there occasionally you run into some people who have some difficulty with dragging and dropping. It's kind of fine motor control. So it's just a matter of just learning on an interactive whiteboard how to control objects and drag them. So what you can do is you can also just hit finish to finish the picture. Again, you can hit a restart button to restart the activity so other people have a chance at it. Now, why did I put this particular picture in there if I'm trying to get my students to think about using different activities for mathematics? In this particular activity, a real hopscotch activity will help children develop visual, spatial, and fine motor, and then if you're actually outside doing hopscotch gross motor activities. And we did that in my elementary school. The next activity that I would like to share with you is called the Scrapbook Activity. Now with the Scrapbook Activity, you can take pictures of your students or whoever, and with your digital camera, you can put them into a folder, and very, very quickly with SoftChalk, you can just say, I want to create a scrapbook activity, and then point to that folder with all the images, and then they will put the images into a scrapbook for you. And then once the scrapbook is built, and you can go in and you can amend it, change the order of pictures, take pictures out, you can add text. In this particular scrapbook activity, I went to Google to images, and I found images of foods. And my idea was to relate math to health. And so I'm thinking about eating healthy foods and asking questions that relate to math. So in this particular case, my question is related to shape. And in this particular case, I'm asking them to figure out how you would serve these pictures of desserts to your family of 4, so that everyone will feel that they are given their equal share. In this particular activity, I'm asking them to see if they can identify the different kinds of drinks, but how might you group these drinks into different categories? How would you divide this pizza so that your 2 brothers and 5 sisters and you each get a slice? And then this is estimating skills. Now, how many raisins do you think they're using here in this baking activity? So this is just some ideas that I was giving my students on how to use a scrapbook activity. Now this next activity is called the label activity, and I just want to tell you that my suggestion is that whatever picture you choose to go into this label activity, make sure it's a large enough one. You can see mine's pretty small. It's right up here in the corner. So I probably would find a larger image, or at least amended this one to make it bigger as it goes into this activity. But the idea of this particular label activity is to simply match. So this is 3/4, the green is 3/4, and this shows 1/4. All right. Again, for my personal activity, watching the children at Virginia Avenue Elementary and my own granddaughter, they really like the sorting activity. And you can have many different categories at the top. I think I've built mine with as many as 5 or 6 different categories. But in this case, I have less than half and I have more than half. What you would do, again, if you're on the interactive whiteboard, come up and tap. That would turn a card over, or if you're at a computer, just tap with your mouse. And so we're looking at, where would this go? Does this show less than half or more than half? So if I put it here, it boings down, but if I put it here, it will stick. Notice that I have also configured this activity to keep score, all right, for finding out how many I am getting correct. So I'm now going to try to answer these correctly. And then again, you can restart the activity. No, they have an activity called a timeline activity. So I was trying to be creative with this one. I created a timeline of some American events, and then if you see below, I have some word problems. Using the timeline above, find when the Boston Tea Party happened and when the Treaty of Paris was signed, ending the war. How many years passed between these 2 events? What you would do here is you would click on the event, you would read about the event, you would note the date, and then you would close it, go to the next event, read about it, and note the date, and then figure out how many years passed between the 2 events. So in this case, I'm just using a timeline, and you can picture yourself in a large class. People are looking at the timeline. They're interacting with it in some way, or again, as a standalone activity. Now, in just a few minutes, I'm going to introduce to you Thinkfinity, where I send my students to get ideas for developing their lessons. But in Thinkfinity, one of the features that you can find in Thinkfinity are some widgets. So I found this widget called Today in History. And through the Thinkfinity website, I copied the code, and then in SoftChalk, when I went to insert an activity, I inserted a widget. I copied the code for the Today in History widget right into it, and then when I saved it, it works now beautifully in my SoftChalk lesson. So this is a widget where I found through another site called thinkfinity.org, copied the code, pasted it into widget in SoftChalk, and now it is in my SoftChalk lesson. And you can see that you can really dig down into this. And then this takes me right to the Thinkfinity site where I can read a little bit more about Jonas Salk. I'm just going to close that for just a moment. I'm going to turn the next page before I come back to Thinkfinity, because I want to also tell you that in SoftChalk, once you find other websites that you would like to embed into your SoftChalk lesson, it's very easy to do. I just found some of these websites. This one is on number patterns and times tables and bar graphers. Actually, I found those websites through Thinkfinity. I copied the URL. And then in my SoftChalk lesson, I just simply went to insert a hyperlink, and now these are live. And these will go to those websites. Okay? I'm not going to take the time to do that. What I am going to do, though, is I am going to go back to this previous page, and I'm going to click on the Thinkfinity link so that we can just visit that just for a few minutes, so you can see where you can go to get lesson plan ideas and other resources to use when you develop your own SoftChalk lesson. Thinkfinity.org is managed by the the Verizon Foundation. My understanding is that it used to be called Marco Polo, and the Verizon Foundation bought Marco Polo and renamed it Thinkfinity. So what I tell my students to do is go to thinkfinity.org, and you can do one of two things. You can first start for your state standard search. So wherever state you're in the United States, you can pick your state, you can pick your grade, you can pick your subject, and you can find the standards that you're supposed to be teaching for that grade level and in that subject area. Well, let's just say you know basically what the standards are. If you just want to get some ideas for a topic, I'm going to type in the word poetry, and I'm just going to hit the word go. And what it's going to do is it's going to search its database for all of the content that Thinkfinity has related to that topic of poetry. And as I go down the page, you're going to see these are content partners. Read, Write, Think from the National Council of Teachers of English and so forth have put the content available on their websites, and what Thinkfinity is doing is pointing you to that content. And if you notice at the very bottom of this page, there are 833 resources that Thinkfinity has found for you related to poetry. Down here, by the way, are a listing of all the content partners that feed into Thinkfinity. So you have the National Geographic with education, you have Science Links, and you have Econ Link, you have the Smithsonian's History Explorer, and so forth. These are all the content partners that will provide that information in Thinkfinity for you. What I'm doing now is I'm going up the page, and you can narrow your search. I typed in the search for poetry, but let's just say I want to know, K2 and maybe grade 3-5 poetry, and I want only interactive. I don't want lesson plans. I just want that. So I'm going to choose those, and I'm going to research, and now it's narrowed it down. And as you can see now, it's telling me that this shape poems activity is for grades K5. It is an interactive game tool. And if I click on this, it will take me to the Read, Write, Think site and give me some information about it. Here's some related resources tab. If I click that, you'll see some related resources. And here's the actual URL for that. Now, what would I do with this URL? I could capture the URL. I can put it into a hyperlink within my SoftChalk lesson so that my students don't have to go to Thinkfinity. They're in my web-based lesson that I've made with SoftChalk, and this will take me directly to the shape poem activity. So I just wanted to point that out to you prior to going on to the actual lesson that I created and that my granddaughter works through. Steve, is this a good time to see if anybody has any questions that I can ask while I launch the next lesson?
I think we're good. There's some questions about where you copy the code in that widget, and I sort of answer that one-on-one with the person responding. But there haven't been a lot of questions yet. I think there will be as we go forward, especially with the video. We do have a poll, though, if you recall. The poll is about whether people teach with a smart whiteboard. Should we ask that question now?
Yes, why don't you do that while I launch my next lesson?
Okay. So the question is, do you or can you teach with an interactive whiteboard? And try to get a sense for the fact that, some people can't, some people are thinking about it. Some people do teach with a whiteboard but don't get the students involved. They really just do it on their own in front of as a teacher in front of the classroom. So I'd like to get a sense for how people are, if the people are using the whiteboard and how they're using it. So we have about 60% of you voting, so there's a 40% of you that are hiding back there. So let's see if we can get more responses. Then we'll get back to Diane's presentation. Okay, well, okay, we're almost at 80%. So I'm just going to count down to 5 because we want to do what and then close the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm closing the poll. And I will share it. So there's about a third of you who have access to an interactive whiteboard but aren't using it. It's nice. 22% are actually getting students involved using the whiteboard in class. Excellent. I think that's a good number. So I'm going to hide that, and Diane, it's back to you again.
That is very interesting. Let me just make a brief comment about that. This is probably about the same information that I would get if I polled my live teachers in class. How many have an interactive whiteboard and actually involve the students coming up and using it. Many of them use it just as they would projecting to a regular whiteboard. So I'm hoping that when you see this lesson, you might get some ideas about not only presenting a lesson, but also how you might be looking at how students interact with the lesson for assessment purposes. But that's all I want to say right now. Let's see what happens. In this particular lesson, I wanted to find out what it was that in Virginia students are going to be asked to respond to on an SOL math review test, for example. And so I went to Thinkfinity. I typed in Virginia. I chose math as the subject area, and I chose grade 2. And I found some standards of learning for mathematics in grade 2, and I chose these 5 for this particular lesson. So you see them listed right there. The first one has to do with recognizing related facts and an inverse relationship between addition and subtraction. The next one has to do with identifying a variety of patterns using numbers, concrete objects, and pictures. The third has to do with fractions. They have to match 1/2 with the words 1/2, for example, with pictures that represent 1/2 and so forth. And then the fourth objective has to do with geometry, understanding the names and recognizing concrete figures, cube, rectangular, solid prisms, square pyramids, and so forth. And then the last one has to do with comparing 2 whole numbers between 0 and 999. And they also have to recognize those symbols and what they mean, greater than, less than, or equal to. So that's what I've use Thinkfinity for initially. Okay, what is it in second grade these kids are supposed to know and be able to do by the end of second grade? So I'm going to go on to the next page. And this is where I began my lesson. I have a picture of piles of apples, and I ask, how many apples do you need to add to pile A to match the number of apples in pile B? When I watched my granddaughter do it, she did count the apples in pile A, she counted the apples in pile B, and then she actually used her fingers. As I recall, she used counting backwards strategy to figure out the difference. But the point was, how many apples are needed to add to pile B to match pile, pile A to match pile B. And so you can click on an answer, you can check your answer and see if you're correct. Well, I made an incorrect answer, as you can see, and it says, sorry, incorrect answer, and the correct answer is B. And if you notice down here, it's also beginning to score. So when we complete this entire lesson, I said there's 50 points for this particular lesson, and it's going to keep a running total for me. And then in this particular question, I said we had 10 little apples, but some were eaten if, and then there's a picture of 3 apples were left, how many were eaten. And so again, you can try your answer and check your answer. In this particular case, I said it correctly, so I get right, good job. When you make these activities, or this is actually called a quiz popper that you put into SoftChalk, and you can change the wording, you can add pictures, there's all different kinds of ways that you can be very creative in putting in little quiz poppers. Now this is a drag and drop activity that I showed you before, and I'm not going to go through it all because you can actually see my granddaughter doing it, but in this particular activity, she would click on it, she read the 3 apples, add 6 more, and she had to configure the answer and then drag it up. Okay, so you're going to actually see her doing this activity. In this particular activity, she had to drag the numbers from the bottom to the spots to the right. So again, she's looking for some missing add-ins. So she had to figure out 3 plus what makes 7, and then she needed to drag and drop. Now, when you see her doing this in the video, you're going to see that she had a little bit of difficulty with the dragging and the dropping. And that is not a problem with SoftChalk. It was just that she was pressing so hard on the interactive whiteboard. She just needed to learn the right pressure points. And I told her eventually to use 2 fingers, and that helped her with that fine motor control. I also want to point out to you that in this particular activity, I configured it so that we could check the answers. So once we have matched all of the words, all of the numbers to the correct number problem here, then we can just call up the answers, and then we can read it out loud and check our answers this way. So with that, I'm going to go to the next page. And I'm going to now turn the volume up so that hopefully you're going to be able to hear Gabby, and we hear the 2 of us talking to each other as she works through this problem.
Dianne, before you start that, let's remind everyone that as they watch this viewing, and it's about 4 minutes long, sort of take note as to what it is that's actually going on, other than the obvious. And if you would, sort of put your comments into the Q&A, and when we're all done, I will sort of read from it and try to group it, and we'll see what you see.
All righty. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it, and you can see this. All right? See, I have it up high enough. Okay, yes. Great.
Perfect.
Read the card. And apples. Take away 4. 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's going to be 6. Read the card. 8 apples. Take away 1. 8. 1. 5 apples added 5. 5 apples added 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 5. 6 apples add 2 more. 6. 7, 8. 3 apples and 3. 3 apples and 6. 3 apples and 6. She said, you have 3 apples and you have 6 more. How many would you have? Okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Very good. All right. Next one, we're going to drag the numbers from the bottom to the top on the right. We'll do that down. And down. So let's look at this. What does this say? 3, 4, right equals 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like you use your counting on strategy. Sorry, don't push so hard. Use 2 fingers. There you go. Very good. 7 minus the right equals 7. 6, 5, 4, 3. We're using backwards turning. Right. 8 equals 10. 8, 9, 10. You know what you did? You read the one below it. You skipped the one that starts with the 9. 9 minus 1 equals 9. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Use your counting back strategy using your fingers. How do you know that the 2 plus the 8 makes 10? How did you know that? 8, 9, 10. You started at 8 and you counted up to 10 and you used 2 fingers, all right? So that's the counting on strategy. What's the next box say? 2 plus right is 10. 8. How did you know? Because right here it has the 8. Right here is the 2. So 2 plus right is 8. Very good. All right. What's the next problem? 10 minus 11 equals 5. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I squared 5. You just turn that back. 9 minus 10 minus 5. Well, how did you do that? That's the last one. That's the last one. Okay.
You know, I've watched that before, but I think I enjoyed it more the second time than the first.
So, Steve, we're going to ask them to respond to that a little bit later?
Yeah, well, there's been a few comments, although not a lot of them.
Okay.
And it said, Mary found it interesting when the 3 was not in the number line. She struggled with the, cumulative process. And one comment, again from Mary, is that she very quickly adapted to the correct amount of pressure and how to move the shape. So there was a relatively short learning curve in terms of her figuring out how that contraption called the Smart Whiteboard works.
That's very true.
anyway, Marilyn, who has actually done an Innovator session for us, hi Marilyn, says she's getting a lot of ideas because she's a math instructor as well, and she develops some of her content for K through 12.
Well, I hope that Marilyn will write me back and give me an analysis too of what she saw happening.
And Bruce said the student was fully engaged. And Mary commented again that she showed a good bit of animation, which may allow some children to function better. So you really got this, got your granddaughter engaged. She was challenged.
I think she really had fun doing this. The other thing is, no one noticed this, but Gabby used the pictures as a number line. She was using it to count up and she was using it to count down, which I thought was really interesting. So she used what she was seeing visually on that board as a number line. So, well, in the next activity, I simply had her review.
Well, something you commented on before that I think I want to say out loud is that you saw, you weren't only looking at how much knowledge she had, but you were watching her problem solving as well. So that you saw how she was figuring out how to solve the problem, because she just didn't know by memory that 8 plus 2 was 10. She sort of figured things out and problem solved in very interesting ways.
And in that regard, I was assessing what problem solving strategies she chose to use. I found very interesting. In this particular case, we were asking them to review 1/2 and 1/3, and matching the words to the actual pictures. And then again, this would be a drag and drop activity. So I'm just going to go on and just go through this and just show you the different activities. In this particular case, it's another quiz popper. It is a true and false. Is this 1/8? So then you could, click on there and find out if that's true or false. But then I also have, I put in a view a hint, how many parts are shaded. In this particular activity, we're labeling. So we're going to label the words 1/2 with 1/2 and so forth. Okay. Again, you can restart to give somebody else a chance to come up to the board and try it. And in this particular case, we were first reviewing these shapes. And then I used a scrapbook activity. So I asked her, what is the shape? And then because I was moving this up, she didn't have those pictures. But you could very well, configure it so they can see both the pictures and the scrapbook. And then we clicked on the corner here and turn the page to reinforce, yes, you said it was a cone, and it is a cone. By the way, I'm not sure if I showed you this before, but you can go backwards by clicking on the left lower corner, and you go forward on the right lower corner. Okay. So that's just an activity, scrapbook activity, just to reinforce or quiz kids on different shapes. And this, again, is another drag and drop activity, but I used actual objects. So what would that be? That's a basketball. Well, what shape would you say that is? And so forth. I'll do one more. What's inside? And then they would match. And this one, I sort of have a word problem. This woman is leaving these hats, and this battery helps to run electric games, and ice cube helps keep our drinks cold. And so they're now matching the items, cone, cube, and cylinders, and they would need to match these. So this woman was weaving hats. Well, what is the shape? And so is it a cone, is it a cube, or is it a cylinder? Well, the default is A. Let's go down to battery. What shape is that? That is a cylinder. Let's change that to a C. And the ice cube, of course, is a cube. So we, one second. This ice cube is what shape? It should be a C. And then that one, the battery is what shape should be a cylinder. I'm sorry. And then we can check our answers. There we go. So partially one correct. Maybe grandmother needs to go back to school. This one is a puzzle, and we actually, Gabby's mother works in a bank, so right off the bat, she knew that these were rolls of coins. And so we talked about what shape would they be, and then she was able to, complete this picture. She didn't have as much trouble with the puzzle pieces as she did with the drag and drop, but I think at that point she's sort of used to how much pressure she needed to put on that interactive whiteboard, and she had good control of it. In this particular problem, let's review the symbol means greater than, less than, and then equal than, and it's a self-check then. So is this true? This pile larger than this? And I asked her to read it out to me, and she knew each and every one. She didn't make one mistake when she was doing these problems. Okay? And this was a sorting activity. So in this particular case, we're asking them to sort the numbers by how much they are worth, put the largest number at the top, and end with the smallest number on the bottom. And again, you can check your answers, as they're going through this.
Well, we're running sort of close to out of time. Well, not out of time yet, but I do want to leave enough space for some Q&A.
And I was just going to, right, and I was just going to end this now by saying if you would like the second grade math review lesson, I have put it up on SoftChalk Connect, and also my creating interactive activities that I began with, and that is also on SoftChalk Connect. So if you just want to make note of the title, second grade math review, or creating interactive activities, you don't have to memorize or write down this whole URL here. You would just simply go to softchalkconnect.com, and this is a place where we, SoftChalk developers, can put in our activities and our lessons. So when you go to softchalkconnect.com, just type in your search field second grade math review, and it should come up. Okay? So Steve, Q&A?
Yes. Let's see, where are we going? Are there good sources for higher ed activities? You went through Infinity, which is really, K through 12. Are there resources you can recommend, both in terms of content and activities, and somebody else asked about image resources for the activities?
I know that it appears that Infinity is K-12. Here at the university, I am training all higher ed faculty members to use Infinity, and our economics professor said, oh boy, I just love Econ Link, I think. You have to remember that Infinity points to content partners. So if you are, let's say, in economics or in science and so forth, many of those content partners are quite appropriate for you. So what I would suggest is, whatever field you are in, to go to the association that supports your field and go to the association's websites and then find out from them where their content partners are. Does that answer your question?
Well, in part anyway. And of course, there are resources that are that we can make available from SoftChalk. SoftChalk includes a media search tool that can look through a bunch of places that you can, one of the places we look for images is Flickr, and you just sort of type in the kind of image you're looking for, and it'll automatically go out and find that. So there are ways to search in a variety of resources, and SoftChalk has partnered with some of them to get that, make it easier to find things. Did you have to do anything special? Oh, a comment made by Dennis that there is an adult learner search category in Thinkfinity, so to follow up on what you were just saying. I haven't used SoftChalk software with a smartboard yet. Did you have to do anything special to get the smartboard to recognize the SoftChalk exercises, or just loaded the lesson into a browser?
I just you just show the lesson through a browser. As long as your smart board is hooked up to your laptop, to the computer that you're using, you're good to go. I had no problem.
Good. Let's see. I think I am done with the questions. Several comments from various people about the fact that it's giving them good ideas to do things. Robert says that he's going to include this kind of interaction in his statistics course and developmental courses at a community college level. So yes, there's expansion beyond, obviously, K through 12 in a whole variety of ways.
I would like to make a comment that there's many, many, many activities now on SoftChalk Connect related to mathematics that I think he will find that would be at his college level, his community college level. So look through SoftChalk Connect and get even more ideas on what you can do to develop that. Also, let me just put in a little plug for Cynthia Stewart, who is our math educator here at Shenandoah University. She's using SoftChalk quite a bit. And her email is cstewart, STEWART, @su.edu. So if you want to contact her for ideas, I bet she'll be glad to help him.
Heidi wants to know how you locate widgets. And widgets is an interesting question because there's widgets all over the internet. It's everything from Thinkfinity to CNN. Many of their video reporters are available as a widget. If you want to include a CNN report inside of your lesson, you can actually do that as well. Matter of fact, we have an entire lesson on our website which talks about how to use and how to find widgets. Right.
Let me just remember how I got that. There are a number of widgets in Thinkfinity. I believe I was in history and I was looking for widgets. There's your Thinkfinity widget library. See, this is the part I couldn't remember. It's thinkfinity.org / there's a widget, then there's a dash library. So I'll just go there. And so here's the widget library in Thinkfinity. Okay? And then when you want to get a widget, I believe I clicked on share, and there's my copy the code right there.
And in SoftChalk, there's an insert widget option. And when you do an insert widget, then you simply paste the code that you've simply copied for there, and it appears in your SoftChalk lesson. Right. When you create your SoftChalk lesson, you're just going to go to insert, and there's a lot of different things you can insert. I think it's toward the bottom. It says widget, so you choose widget, but you need to find the code first. So here I went to Thinkfinity, I found the code, I need to copy that code, and then I just simply pasted it into the widget I was creating in SoftChalk, and that was all there was to it. We have a comment about activities for elementary music and whether that's available in SoftChalk. And I haven't even looked online to see what has been done with music in the SoftChalk Connect library. But I'm sure
I know that
go ahead.
At Shenandoah University, we have a conservatory. And I have trained music professors to use SoftChalk. Now, I can't tell you if they've put their lessons up in SoftChalk Connect, but I do know that there are music people using SoftChalk. So you might want to look and see. Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm going to take the keyboard away, or the presenter away from you, and go to the last session. I promised that we were going to give you some more information about learning more information about SoftChalk and SoftChalk Connect. And something we have just started to do is there is a LinkedIn user group and forum. If you notice right here, let me close this down and
right down here, and I will click on it, and we will go to it. So join us on LinkedIn, and I'll show you, talk about how to get there. And you'll see that, matter of fact, Marilyn Larson, who is, just popped off, who was on this session and has done many math lessons, and the math content is regularly available and highly rated on our SoftChalk Connect website. And there's Dianne following her, and Brittany, who is our manager for our web and Web 2 kind of content. So there's something else for you to consider that is new. You know, this Innovators Online Learning Webinar series is going on for about 4 years now, so we have some of those coming up, and we have introductory webinars. And some of you have asked questions that we can answer best if you drop by our website and do that. We have short courses, and we do some training, a lot of documentation. And let me just sort of quickly jump to our website. And I am now in the Learn More tab of our website. I'll just go to Home. Okay, version 7 is coming out with a bunch of new features, and we are offering version 7 intro webinars right now. But you'll see that you can go to the full calendar here, or you can do the intro sessions, and it's a lot of intro sessions, not just one. There's 2 or 3 various kinds. The Innovator Sessions we were just at. We have a lot of short courses we give, which are hour-long detailed descriptions of specific issues. We have some video tutorials that you can request a demo if you say, hey, I want to put together a group of people and learn more about it. And we have some partner webinars. We're doing one with Merlot in a week, and we're doing one with Blackboard next month, and others are on their way. So I just wanted you to know about all those availability as well. And let me sort of end with this slide and see there's a couple of other questions. Christine, I hope I answered your question, how do you access the online tutorials? Because what you do is just go to the Learn More and go to the videos, and you will find all that out. Also, you can download a 30-day free trial. So it's a fully functioning version of SoftChalk, so you can play with it to your heart's content without spending a penny and see how it works. But just to reinforce the fact that go to LinkedIn and search for groups, and under groups search, put in the word SoftChalk, and you'll come to our LinkedIn discussion. And that's just getting going. It's a fairly new feature we've just added in order to get better communications with our clients and prospective clients. So I hope you take advantage of that and go from there. So we are now on the hour. We've been online and talking for over an hour now. And so I want to thank Dianne especially. Another excellent presentation, Dianne. Thanks so much for coming with us and giving all of our attendees an insight in what's going on. And,
thank you.
And you will get an email tomorrow, and that email will have a couple of things on it. It will include